Even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go. Go, 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 yo, go, go, go. Hustle hard, hustle every single day. I'll be making moves till I'm buried in my grave. To the system.
When I became a widow, there were so many people around me with an opinion, giving me advice on what to do, how to act. And of course, some of the advice was not good advice. So thank you for joining me today. My name is Emma Wanjiko, and on Power Widow, we discuss things about widows, their plight, their kids, their lives, and how to find happiness as a widow. So thank you for watching today. Today, I'm giving you the worst advice I've ever received in my first year of being widowed. Everybody has an opinion. I received all manner of advice that it's even hard to imagine that people can even consider doing such things. And it was really disturbing because you wonder whether if those people were widowed, they would apply the same advice in their lives. So today I give you 5 pieces of advice that I was given by people around me and that I consider the worst pieces of advice. So, starting with the first piece of advice, this came from an older woman who I respected, a woman who can be my great grandmother. And on the day when we buried my husband, I was overcome by so much emotion and I had tears throughout. And to this end, this lady, after the funeral, came to me and told me that I should never show tears to my kids. She told me boldly that I should never allow myself to cry in front of my kids. And I thought about that piece of advice for a long time after that. And I realized that's not right. Kids are more resilient than we imagine, and we cannot pretend that we are not going through grief. Remember, even kids have to grieve. Kids, in my view, they like authenticity. They can feel real emotion. If I fake it, if I pretend that I'm not sad, kids will be more impacted negatively. And I think as a widow, when you're widowed, if you feel like crying, just cry in front of whoever, because this has nothing to do with them. You can cry, you can express yourself the way you need to, and your kids will understand. They understand that their mother is going through a lot of grief, a lot of pain. And you know, in grief counseling, they say that you go through the pain, you don't avoid the pain, you don't sweep it under the rug, you go through the pain. And that's how we find healing. So, that piece of advice, I consider the worst piece of advice that I've ever received from an older woman. So, the second piece of advice that I consider also the worst that I got was when somebody I respected, like a parent, told me, they came to me and told me that since now you're a widow, focus on raising your kids. Don't have so many things or ambitions in your head. Just focus on raising your kids and feeding them, educating them, making sure they're clothed, and that was enough. And also, when I went through this piece of advice, because you have to think about everything people tell you, I discovered that for many widows, their dreams come to an end when their husbands pass on, and this is not right. As a widow, we don't just aim to just feed our kids and that's it, educate them and that's it. No. In fact, personally, after I was widowed, I discovered that I needed to dream more. I have bigger dreams now than when my husband was alive. Why? Because I realized it will take me to fulfill those goals, and I have to have a lot of them, and I need the strategies therein. So if we stop dreaming as widows, what example are we setting for our kids? No, you don't have to focus on the basics. You don't have to focus on just easy and thanking God that everything is okay. I think God wants us to dream bigger, dream more. achieve bigger goals, because we can, we have the power is within. So that I thought was a very, very bad piece of advice that I got from an older woman. Don't apologize for having dreams as a widow. Those are your dreams. They're the ones that keep you going every single day. It is good to move on, even if you're moving with fear. Let us still dream, even if we are fearful. Let us dream as we continue, as we keep moving on, as we go on, and I'm sure we will achieve and attain our goals. The third piece of advice that I got that I consider the worst also is when a group of church women came to me in our fellowship, and they attempted to advise me about how to live as a widow in terms of relationships. And to be more specific, they told me that it's good to just get married to Jesus. To be more specific, even, they told me that I should forget about men and just focus on Jesus and get married to Him, quite literally. And I think, in my view, that's a bit radical for a Christian to say that as a young widow, you should shelve all your emotions and get married to Jesus, quite literally, and never think about any man. What if you want to get remarried? I think as a young widow, it's good to be real. It's good to get real advice. You don't cease to become a human being just because you've been widowed. You have emotions, you have a social life, you have everything that a human being requires. You cannot literally get married to Jesus. Yes, you can be committed to Jesus, but you also need to figure out whether you want to move on in terms of dating. And of course, this piece of advice, of course, will require more delving into, because there is a whole can of worms to be opened in this topic, where we talk about relationships, love, and dating as a widow. This is a whole topic that we need to focus on, because as much as the Bible says, yes, Jesus is our husband, yes, it's true. As widows, He's our provider, He's our father. But in the literal sense, when it comes to dating and relationships, I think we need a more realistic approach. And I know we'll delve that in a later video where we talk about dating as a widow. So I thought that was a not very sound advice, because remember, even if you go back to the Bible, it says that young widows should marry, yeah, so that they can avoid all these temptations and sins. And I think that's more realistic than older women telling you to just focus on Jesus and forget about men. But that's a huge topic for another day. So, number 4, another piece of advice that I got from somebody who was working with me, and she's also an older woman. She looked and saw that I only have daughters. I have 3 daughters. And she sat me down one day and told me that it is good to consider to have a son. Yeah, that I need to go find a son somewhere. And why? Why should I find a son? So that my husband's name can be retained, because I only have daughters. And let me say, this is a very misleading piece of advice for widows. It is good for us to be very keen. Sometimes in our African culture, we get carried away because we are obsessed with sons. Personally, I think my daughters are enough to carry the legacy of my husband. We are more than enough. I don't need a son and pretend that that son is my husband's so that his name can live on. So I think that advice is time bad. I think it's not good for widows to listen to such. But just in case you're a widow who feels that they need more children, I think there are better ways to follow through, so that you can consider adopting, you can get married again, so that you can have the kids you want. Remember, some widows are left even without kids. Others are left with just one child. And of course, we understand why you would want to add to your number of kids. Of course, that's natural for every person. But it is good to do that for the right reasons, not because a son is the only person who can carry the legacy of the family. So at number 5, this came from a very close friend, a person almost my age, and I was really surprised. And she told me that I needed to look for a married man and become a side chick or a second wife because I would not find a man between the age of 40 and 60. They are not there. She said that they are just no single men between 40 and 60. So, and for this reason, I just needed to be a side chick of a married man. And I think society, we are misleading our widows. I don't believe that is the case. I really don't have to be somebody's number 3 or number 2 or number 4 because I don't have that scarcity mentality. It is good as widows to also retain our dignity. What do you want? Of course, I'm not here to judge you if you choose to be in a relationship with whoever. But it is good to retain our values, to know the reason why we are doing things. You don't have to be with somebody because you fear they are no men. I think we are more powerful than that. I think we have more opportunities, even for love. I believe that. I have seen so many widows remarry. Even though I've been widowed for less than 2 years, I have seen successful cases. You don't have to settle for less. So that I thought that was a very bad advice, looking for married men. And of course, it's also good for society to stop pressuring widows in all manner of ways, from dating, from parenting, from how they spend their money. It's good for us to give widows a break, for them to live their own lives, to make their own decisions. We don't have to interfere. I believe that God gives us the grace to guide us in the right direction, of course, when we seek Him. I believe many widows do make very good decisions for their family. And overall, you don't need these exotic pieces of advice just because. I think the priority here is for widows to be at peace with their work, with their kids, and everything, so that they can raise their kids in happiness and harmony. So, for widows, I would say don't lower your standards, your values. Listen to your gut and do what is right by you and also by your kids. And if you have to cut off some people from your life, that's what you have to do. Personally, I had to cut off some people because they had so much opinion every single day, every single month. They needed to know what I'm doing with my life. And that, of course, that is interference. And if people cannot genuinely accept that you're moving on and this is your reality, and they have to come with your bad advice, I think the only way is just to cut them off and give yourself a break, especially that first year. When you're widowed, that first year is the worst. It's the hardest. It's when you learn how to cope, to parent alone, to provide for your kids alone. That is the hardest year. So that first year, your foundation has to be correct. You can't lay your foundation with bad advice or unsound truths in your life. So it's also good to look at the people who are around you, the people who are your friends, so that you can succeed in this journey of widowhood. When I was widowed at 36 in the year 2021, the first year, of course, friends came and they provided that safety net. But when it came to pieces of advice, you have to vet it. You cannot take everything people say. You have to listen to your gut. You have to have your own values so that you can lead your life the way you want. Because remember, this is your life. It's about your happiness and the happiness of your kids. So thank you very much for listening to me today. And remember, for more resources and beautiful things, accessories, visit our website, beautykenya.ke. And I'll see you next time with a new topic or resources to help widows and people who are downcast, people who feel like giving up. We are here to serve you, we are here to encourage you. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. The minute you became a widow, notice that there are so many people around you with an opinion, trying to tell you what to do, how to live, how to act? What is the worst advice you've ever received as a widow?